There is a hunger inside every human being that cannot be satisfied by the usual things. You may think it will go away once you earn more money, or once you achieve the recognition you have been waiting for, or once you finally arrive at the moment you dreamed of for years. But when you get there, when you have the prize in your hands and you look around, something is missing. The room feels quiet in a way that no applause can fill. The moment is supposed to taste like triumph, but there is a strange aftertaste. It is emptiness. This emptiness is not new. It has been following you since the earliest days you can remember. As a child, you thought life would make sense when you grew up. As a teenager, you thought love would give you everything. As an adult, you thought success would finally silence the doubt inside you. And yet, the hunger remains. The names change, the costumes change, but the hunger stays. Jacob Needleman described this hunger not as a mistake or a weakness, but as the very beginning of philosophy. The ancient philosophers, both in the East and in the West, knew that life begins when we recognize the emptiness that ordinary satisfactions cannot erase. Socrates called it the voice of the daimon, that inner whisper that asks for something more real than possessions or victories. The Buddha spoke of it as dukkha, the underlying dissatisfaction that even pleasure cannot resolve. In the Jewish and Christian traditions, prophets called it the thirst of the soul, the longing for the living water. Different names, same hunger. We live in a culture that tries to hide this hunger. Advertisements promise us fullness in the form of objects. Social media convinces us that the right number of likes equals meaning. Careers are built on the illusion that promotion equals fulfillment. We keep running faster, not because we are close to satisfaction, but because we are terrified of stopping and realizing that no matter how far we run, the hunger follows us. But what if this hunger is not our enemy? What if it is not proof that we are broken? What if it is the most important compass we have? Needleman insisted that the hunger is sacred. It is the soul reminding us that we are more than what we have become. It is not an error to feel empty after reaching a goal. It is a sign that life is calling you to a deeper purpose. Think about the last time you achieved something you had been working on for months. For a few hours, or even a few days, you felt joy. You celebrated. People congratulated you. But then the noise faded. The room grew silent. And in that silence, the hunger returned. You told yourself you needed a new goal. You started running again. But maybe, just maybe, the hunger was asking you not for another race, but for a pause, a chance to listen. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote that the unhappiness of man comes from not being able to sit quietly in a room alone. That line echoes across centuries because it is still true. When we stop moving, when the external noise dies down, we come face to face with ourselves. And we often do not like what we see. We see fear. We see loneliness. We see the fragility we work so hard to hide. But behind all of that, there is something else waiting. A presence. A possibility. The hunger is the path toward it. You can think of this hunger like a light in the distance. In the middle of a dark landscape, you see a faint glow. You can ignore it and keep wandering in circles, or you can decide to move toward it. At first, the way is unclear. You stumble. You doubt. You may even turn back. But if you keep walking, step by step, the light grows stronger. That light is not outside you. It is inside. The hunger is the signal that guides you to it. This is why it is dangerous to treat the hunger as a problem to fix. Many turn to distractions, addictions, or endless entertainment to cover it. Others drown it with busyness, filling every hour so there is no room for the question to rise. But the hunger does not disappear. It waits. It whispers at night. It returns in moments of silence. And if we are brave enough to listen, it can open the door to a life that is not only about survival, but about awakening. Needleman used to say that philosophy begins not when we learn what to think, but when we realize that our life itself is a question. The hunger is the mark of that question. It is life itself asking you, what are you living for? Who are you beneath the roles you play? Where is your attention when the noise stops? Modern psychology sometimes reduces this hunger to chemical imbalance or unmet childhood needs. Those things are real, but they are not the whole picture. The hunger Needleman spoke of is deeper. It is not solved with pills or affirmations. It is not a glitch to be repaired. It is the soul trying to wake up. It is the reminder that we are not machines. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting by a window on a quiet evening. The sky is turning dark. The street outside is almost empty. For the first time in days, you are not rushing. You are not checking your phone. You are not working. You are just sitting. At first, your mind tries to fill the silence with chatter, but then the hunger rises. You feel it in your chest. It is not painful. It is not pleasant. It is simply there, like a pressure asking to be named. Most people run from this moment. But if you stay, something shifts. You realize that the hunger is not killing you. It is leading you. The danger of ignoring this hunger is that life becomes mechanical. You wake up, work, eat, scroll, sleep, repeat. Years pass. Achievements accumulate. Photos fill your feed. But the question remains unanswered. And in the quiet hours of the night, when you are alone with yourself, the hunger returns to remind you that you are living half asleep. The beauty of acknowledging the hunger is that it connects you with every human being across history. Every poet who wrote about longing, every mystic who spoke of the hidden flame, every philosopher who questioned the meaning of existence, they all felt it. You are not alone in this. The hunger is not yours only. It is the human condition. And when you see it that way, it stops being shameful and starts being holy. So the first step toward meaning is not finding the perfect philosophy or mastering the perfect meditation. It is simply daring to admit the hunger. To say honestly, I have achieved much, but I still feel something is missing. I love deeply, but I still feel a longing I cannot explain. I am surrounded by noise, but inside me there is a silence that calls. That honesty is the doorway to real philosophy. This hunger will not go away because it is not meant to. It is not a bug in your system. It is the sign that you are alive at a deeper level. You can spend a lifetime running from it, or you can finally pause and listen. That pause may be the scariest thing you ever do, but it may also be the beginning of the life you have been searching for all along. The hunger is not against you. It is for you. It is your greatest ally. Most people spend their lives chasing answers. They want quick solutions, formulas that work instantly, and explanations that calm the uncertainty of existence. But Jacob Needleman reminded us that philosophy does not begin with answers. It begins with questions. The right question has more power to transform a human life than 1,000 ready-made responses. The art of asking is the core of real philosophy, and it is also the forgotten practice in our modern age. Why are questions so powerful? Because a question opens space. An answer closes it. When you hold a question sincerely in your heart, your whole being shifts. You become more attentive, more alive, more present. But when you grab the first answer that comes your way, the movement stops. Answers can be useful, but they can also become cages. A question is alive. An answer, once frozen, can become dead weight. Think of the last time someone asked you a question that shook you. Not a technical question, not a question with a correct response you could Google, but a question that pierced into your chest. Maybe it was, "Why are you here?" Maybe it was, "Who are you when no one is watching?" Maybe it was, "What are you avoiding?" Such questions do not let you sleep. They echo in your mind when you wake up at 3 in the morning. They haunt you while you walk alone. And in that haunting, they begin to change you. Needleman would often say that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. If your questions are shallow, your life stays shallow. If your questions are deep, your life deepens with them. But depth requires courage, because the real questions are often the ones we are most afraid to ask. They expose illusions. They cut through masks. They confront us with truths we have been running from. Modern culture does not encourage real questions. It prefers quick responses. When we feel pain, we look for a hack. When we feel confusion, we want a tip or a life coach to give us 5 steps. When we feel lost, we want an app that calculates the fastest way back to confidence. We are addicted to immediate fixes. But the human soul does not work this way. You cannot reduce the mystery of being alive to a manual. The hunger of the soul cannot be satisfied by slogans. Only a question asked with sincerity has the power to lead you into the mystery itself. Let me give you an image. Imagine standing at the entrance of a forest. You want to explore it. If someone hands you a pre-drawn map with every tree marked and every path explained, the sense of adventure disappears. You may walk through, but you are not really exploring. But if you are given a single guiding question, where does this path lead? Sudu. Suddenly your senses sharpen. You notice the sound of branches. You feel the ground. You look carefully at every sign. The question awakens your attention. This is how real philosophy works. In the East, Zen masters often taught by asking paradoxical questions called koans. A student would ask for wisdom, and the master would reply with a riddle like, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" At first, the student would struggle. There is no logical answer. But over time, holding the question without rushing to solve it, something inside the student would break open. The question was not about the answer. It was about the transformation produced by living with it. In the West, Socrates used the same method. He walked the streets of Athens, not giving lectures, but asking questions. What is justice? What is courage? What is the good life? He knew that most people repeated answers. They had heard from tradition or authority, but few had ever asked sincerely for themselves. His questioning disturbed people. It made them uncomfortable. And yet, it was the birth of philosophy in the Western world. Needleman saw himself in this lineage. He knew that the art of asking was the art of living. To ask is to admit you do not know. And that humility is the doorway to learning. To ask is also to trust that life holds meaning beyond your current understanding. A real question is not cynicism. It is not complaining. It is a cry from the soul. What are the questions that matter most? There is no universal list. For some, the question is, who am I? For others it is, what is goodness? For others still it is, how do I live without betraying myself? The point is not to collect as many questions as possible. The point is to Find the one question that stays with you, the one that follows you into sleep, into work, into love, into loss. That question is your teacher. It will not let you rest until you begin to live differently. There is a danger here. Our culture has turned even questions into entertainment. We post them as clickbait. We treat them as motivational quotes. But a question loses its power when it becomes decoration. For a question to be alive, you must let it disturb you. You must carry it, not just think about it once. It must sit with you in silence, press on you in difficult moments, whisper when you are tempted to lie to yourself. Only then does it begin to open something deeper. Imagine writing a question on a piece of paper and putting it in your pocket. You carry it everywhere. Every time you touch it, you remember. It is not about repeating the words. It is about letting the presence of the question shape your attention. Over weeks, months, years, the question becomes part of your being. It stops being words and becomes a lens through which you see everything. That is how meaning emerges. Needleman taught that the greatest tragedy is not to lack answers, but to live without questions. A person who has no question lives like a machine. They wake, eat, work, sleep, repeat. They may be efficient, they may be admired, but inside there is no depth. Their life is like a surface of water with no reflection. Only when a question pierces that surface does the depth reveal itself. So the invitation is simple, but not easy. Ask yourself, what question am I avoiding? Maybe it is about your relationships. Maybe it is about your work. Maybe it is about death. Maybe it is about God. Whatever it is, dare to ask. And do not rush to answer. Let the question breathe. Sit with it. Write it. Speak it softly. Carry it in silence. And you will notice that the question begins to change you, even before any answer appears. The world does not need more quick answers. It needs more people who live their questions with honesty. Because a human being who carries a question with sincerity becomes more human. They become more alive, more compassionate, more attentive. Their presence changes others. Their silence carries weight. Their eyes reflect depth. That is the gift of the art of asking. And here lies the challenge. Most people are afraid to ask because they know that once the question enters, life cannot remain the same. A real question will dismantle illusions. It will demand honesty. It will force you to admit what you do not know. But in that humility, you discover freedom. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer need to wear the mask of certainty. You can finally live as a seeker, not a machine. So I leave you with this loop, a question that cannot be avoided forever. What is the question you are most afraid to ask yourself? That question, the one you push aside, the one you silence with noise, is the one that can change everything. Silence is one of the most misunderstood realities of human life. For many people, silence feels like absence. They imagine silence as a void, a blank space where nothing happens, a pause to be endured before the next word or the next action. Yet silence, when we truly enter it, is not empty. Silence is alive. It is full of presence. It is the doorway through which meaning begins to appear. Jacob Needleman called silence the heart of philosophy, because only in silence can the question of life be heard with clarity. Think of how rare real silence is today. Every street is filled with traffic. Every room hums with machines. Every pocket vibrates with notifications. Even when the noise outside fades, the noise inside continues. Thoughts race endlessly. Memories replay. Fantasies distract. Worries cling. We are surrounded by sound and saturated with inner chatter. To sit quietly for even 5 minutes can feel unbearable. That is why most people avoid silence. They are not escaping boredom. They are escaping themselves. But silence is not the absence of self. It is the discovery of a deeper self. At first, entering silence feels uncomfortable. The mind grows louder, like a crowded room where voices rise when the music stops. All the things you have been avoiding with noise begin to shout. Regrets, fears, hidden grief, they rise to the surface. You may want to run. You may want to turn on a song, make a call, scroll a feed, anything to drown them again. But if you resist that impulse, if you remain still, something remarkable begins to happen. Slowly, the shouting fades. Thoughts lose their grip. The waves calm. And then you notice something you had forgotten. The sound of your own breathing, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the stillness behind the noise. In that stillness, you feel a presence. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, steady, undeniable. It feels as if life itself has been waiting for you to arrive. Silence reveals truths that words cannot capture. In silence, you see the futility of chasing approval. In silence, you realize how little you need to feel whole. In silence, you discover the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the fear of being with yourself. Solitude is the joy of being with yourself in the presence of something greater. Silence transforms loneliness into solitude. Philosophers and mystics across cultures have known this. In Buddhism, meditation is the art of entering silence and discovering that thoughts are clouds passing across the sky of awareness. In Christianity, monks spoke of the desert silence where God speaks not with words, but with presence. In Sufism, silence was seen as the doorway to the music of the heart. All point to the same truth. Silence is not absence, but the deepest form of communication. Needleman emphasized that silence is the condition for philosophy. Without silence, questions remain on the surface. With silence, questions sink into the depths of being. For example, you may ask yourself, "Who am I?" If you fill the moment with noise, you will answer quickly, "I am my job, my family role, my achievements." But if you hold the question in silence, the usual answers dissolve. You begin to sense that who you are cannot be reduced to roles or labels. You feel the presence of something larger, something unnameable. That is philosophy alive. There is power in practicing silence intentionally. Imagine beginning each day not by reaching for your phone, but by sitting quietly for a few minutes. At first, the habit feels strange, but over time, you begin to notice subtle changes. You react less quickly to anger. You listen more carefully to others. You sense meaning in small details. Sunlight on a wall, the voice of a friend, the taste of water. Silence has trained your attention. It has opened your perception. Silence also changes relationships. When you listen to someone without rushing to fill the pauses, you give them a gift. You show them they are worth the space. Often, what people need most is not advice, but presence. Silence gives presence. It communicates respect, empathy, and care. In a noisy world, to be heard in silence is healing. Of course, silence is not always comfortable. It exposes what we hide. It shows us the ways we betray ourselves. It reveals our dependence on distractions. But this exposure is medicine. Without seeing the wound, we cannot heal. Without silence, we remain asleep. With silence, we begin to awaken. The danger is that society teaches us to fear silence. Children are raised in constant stimulation. Adults are encouraged to always multitask, always consume, always produce. Silence is treated as wasted time. But in reality, silence is the most productive thing we can experience. It reconnects us to meaning. It teaches us to live with depth. Without it, we drown in surfaces. Picture a lake. When the water is agitated, you cannot see beneath it. But when it becomes still, the depths are revealed. Silence stills the lake of the mind. It allows you to see deeper. You notice the roots of your actions, the motives behind your words, the longing beneath your desires. This clarity cannot come from endless talking or thinking. It comes only from silence. Needleman warned that without silence, philosophy becomes empty talk. We can debate endlessly, memorize theories, quote authors, but none of it transforms us if we never pause to listen. Silence is the soil where wisdom grows. Without it, words remain sterile. With it, words come alive, rooted in experience. So the invitation is simple but radical. Dare to sit in silence. Not once, not as an experiment, but as a practice. Begin with a few minutes. Allow the discomfort. Notice the noise rising. Do not run. Stay. Beyond the noise, there is presence. And in that presence, meaning waits. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of in silence? Is it the memory I do not want to face? Is it the truth that my busyness is a mask? Is it the fear that I am more than I appear to be? Whatever it is, remember that the fear itself is the doorway. The silence you fear is the silence that can set you free. The world is desperate for this rediscovery. Imagine leaders who pause in silence before decisions. Imagine families who sit together without screens, sharing presence instead of distraction. Imagine a society that teaches children not only to speak, but also to listen to silence. The noise of the world would not disappear, but our relationship to it would change. We would no longer be slaves to sound. We would carry an inner stillness. Wherever we go, this is not idealism, it is practical. The most creative discoveries often come in moments of silence. The deepest healing occurs in silence. The most profound connections between people are felt in silence. Silence is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And so the question remains, what is the silence you are running from? What would happen if you stopped running and allowed it to embrace you? This is not theory. It is an experiment you can try today. And if you do, you may find that silence is not empty at all. It is full of life, full of meaning, full of the presence you have been searching for all along. The silence you. Fear is the silence that can free you. The question of meaning is not resolved in books or in long discussions. Meaning only comes alive when it enters the fabric of daily living. Jacob Needleman insisted that philosophy is not a theory floating above our heads. It is a practice of attention woven into each moment. To live as if life has meaning is to embody philosophy, not just think it. It is to carry the hunger, the question, and the silence into the way we walk, speak, love, and act. Many people think of the meaning of life as a grand discovery, something revealed in a single moment of enlightenment, a secret that once unlocked will give permanent clarity. But the truth is quieter. Meaning does not appear as a final answer. It appears in how you live right now. It is not an abstract principle. It is an attitude, a posture, a way of meeting the world. Consider the way you breathe, Most of the time, you do not notice it. You take in air. You let it out, again and again. But if you bring awareness to your breath, if you feel the air enter and leave, if you notice the rise and fall, suddenly the simple act becomes full of meaning. It reminds you that you are alive, that you belong to the rhythm of existence. Nothing new has been added, only attention. Yet the experience changes completely. This is the secret of meaning. It is not hidden far away. It is hidden in plain sight, waiting for attention. The same is true in relationships. You can speak to someone while half distracted, or you can give them your full attention. In the first case, the conversation is empty. In the second, it becomes meaningful. You can look at your child with eyes clouded by your worries, or you can look at them with presence, as if they are the most important being in the world in that instant. The difference is not in the child. It is in your way of being. Presence transforms ordinary life into meaningful life. Work also reflects this truth. Many see their job only as survival, a series of tasks to complete. But if you bring meaning into it, even simple work can carry dignity. When you sweep a floor with attention, when you write an email with care, when you serve another person with respect, the task ceases to be mechanical. It becomes an expression of who you are. The meaning is not in the task itself. It is in the consciousness you bring. Needleman often warned that the tragedy of modern life is not the lack of information, but the lack of lived attention. We fill our minds with knowledge, but we forget to live it. We talk about love, but forget to practice listening. We talk about peace, but forget to practice silence. We talk about purpose, but forget to practice presence in the smallest details. Meaning is not waiting at the end of a long intellectual journey. It is waiting in the way you stir your tea, the way you listen to the wind, the way you speak to a stranger. This does not mean that life becomes simple or that all suffering disappears. Living with meaning does not erase pain. It transforms it. When you suffer with attention, you notice that even pain can open your heart. You feel the fragility of existence, and in that fragility, you discover compassion for others who suffer as well. The wound becomes a doorway to connection. Meaning is not the absence of wounds. It is the presence you bring to them. Living as if life has meaning also means resisting the temptation to reduce existence to utility. Modern culture wants to measure everything in terms of productivity, profit, or efficiency. But meaning cannot be measured. It can only be experienced. A walk in nature may be useless by economic standards, but it can be full of meaning. Sitting with a friend in silence may produce nothing, but it can be the most important moment of the day. Needleman taught that philosophy restores dignity to what the world calls useless. It reminds us that what is most human cannot be commodified. It is important to recognize the obstacles. Living with meaning is not automatic. The inertia of habit pulls us toward distraction. The weight of cynicism tells us it is naive. The pace of society tells us there is no time. But these are illusions. The truth is that meaning is always available. It is never absent. It is only forgotten. To remember is an act of will, a gentle but persistent choice. One way to cultivate this remembering is to close each day with reflection. Not a long analysis, but a simple review. Ask yourself, where was I present today? Where did I forget myself? What moment carried meaning? What moment slipped by unnoticed? This practice is not about judgment. It is about awareness. Over time, you begin to notice that the days when you lived with presence feel full, even if nothing dramatic happened, and the days when you lived mechanically feel empty, even if many things were accomplished. This contrast teaches you. Another way is to cultivate small rituals. Not grand ceremonies, but simple acts done with intention. Lighting a candle before a meal, taking a deep breath before entering your home, saying thank you before sleep. These rituals remind you that life is sacred, even in its smallest details. They anchor meaning in the ordinary. Living with meaning also invites us to question how we use our time. The modern schedule is often filled with noise, endless tasks, and constant interruptions. But if you pause and ask, does this activity carry meaning? You may begin to choose differently. You may begin to say no to what drains and yes to what nourishes. This is not selfishness. It is clarity. It is the recognition that your time is your life, and to waste it on emptiness is to betray yourself. Needleman reminded us that meaning is not found by escaping the world. It is found by engaging with it differently. The task is not to abandon your family, your work, or your responsibilities, but to bring a new quality of presence to them. The meaning of life is not discovered in isolation. It is lived in relationship, with others, with nature, with the mystery that surrounds us. Consider how a tree grows. It does not hurry. It does not pretend. It simply stands, rooted and open. And in its being, it gives shade, oxygen, beauty. It fulfills its purpose by being fully itself. The same is true for us. When we live authentically, with attention and presence, we give meaning not only to ourselves, but to those around us. Our being nourishes others. The deepest question then becomes, are you willing to live as if life has meaning right now? Not tomorrow. Not after achieving more. Not when everything is perfect. But now. Because now is the only time meaning can be lived. The future is a concept. The past is memory. Meaning exists only in this breath, this gesture, this moment. Do not wait for the perfect philosophy or the perfect teacher. The meaning of life is already here, woven into your existence. The hunger led you to ask. The question led you to silence. And silence now leads you to life itself. To live with meaning is to live as if every moment matters, as if every encounter is sacred, as if every breath is a gift. So, the invitation is clear. Begin where you are. Bring presence to what you are. Doing now, let meaning enter through attention. And notice how life begins to change, not through grand answers, but through the way you live the smallest details. And now I ask you, are you ready to live as if life has meaning today? If this reflection speaks to you, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to Jacob Needleman. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us continue exploring together the questions that awaken who we truly are. The search for meaning begins with a hunger that nothing in the world can satisfy. That hunger is not your weakness. It is the mark of your soul. It is the first whisper that life is larger than possessions, larger than recognition, larger than the roles you play. To feel this hunger is not failure. It is the beginning of philosophy. From that hunger rises the need for a question. Not a question about technical things, not a question that can be answered with statistics, but a question that shakes the core of your being. Who am I? What is the good? How should I live? These questions are not decorations for a conversation. They are the fire that keeps a human life awake. To avoid them is to live asleep. To embrace them is to allow life to work on you, shaping you into something deeper. But questions cannot live without silence. In noise, they collapse into shallow answers. In silence, they grow roots. When you dare to remain still, even for a few minutes, the usual answers dissolve. The noise of the mind fades, and then the question becomes alive, vibrating in the center of your being. Silence is not empty. It is the ground where meaning reveals itself. Without silence, philosophy is just words. With silence, philosophy becomes life. And yet, all of this remains abstract until it enters the way you live. Meaning is not a theory. It is a practice. It appears in how you breathe, how you listen, how you love, how you work. It appears in small gestures done with presence. It appears in the way you face pain with dignity, in the way you choose compassion over cynicism, in the way you remember that every moment is sacred. The meaning of life is not hidden in distant answers. It is hidden in the way you live today. So, the path is clear. Hunger awakens the question. The question leads you to silence. Silence prepares you to live with meaning. This is not a straight line, but a circle. Each part feeds the other. The hunger returns. The question deepens. The silence expands. The living becomes richer. And through this cycle, life itself becomes philosophy in action. Now the challenge is yours. Are you willing to honor the hunger instead of hiding it? Are you willing to carry the question instead of silencing it? Are you willing to stay in silence instead of fleeing? Are you willing to live today as if life has meaning? If this journey speaks to you, do not let it end here. Subscribe to Jacob Needleman say, leave your reflection in the comments, and let us continue together in the practice of awakening the questions that define who we are.